Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's ranking all the episodes of Star Trek Voyager Season 1. This video is continuing a tradition of videos that I do whenever I finish covering a season of Star Trek, where I review every single episode, one episode at a time. I have recently finished covering Season 1 of Voyager, so here I am to rank all the episodes of Season 1 of Voyager from my least favorite to my favorite. So, it's a tradition where I will tally up the average score of a season, because I give every episode a score between 1 and 10. And I've been going through all the shows, well, except for the original series. I didn't really start it with Next Gen as far as these, ranking videos go. And, so I find out the average for every season and compare. So Season 1 of Voyager is pretty interesting because I have said, and probably will continue to say, that Season 1 of Voyager is my second favorite season of Voyager behind Season 4, because it's got a very strong sense of community, sense of continuity, sense of characters, which I believe that the later seasons, minus 4, lost. And so yeah, I was wondering if the episode average would bear this out. It doesn't really, which I'm not surprised, because I was arguing with someone online about this, because they said, oh, there's not that many good episodes in Season 1, which is kind of true, but that's not why I like it. And this is why sometimes the average score kind of fails sometimes on where I would actually place it, because sometimes it has more to do with the feel of the season. I think that's definitely very true for this season, rather than how good the episodes are and how what direction the show was taking and how they chose to the tone and make it more of a character-based story and have better continuity. Those things are very important to me, even if some of the episodes were a bit more average. However, that being said, I think this might end up still rating a little bit highly. So far, Season 3 of Next Gen has the highest average score, because I didn't give any negative ratings. A negative rating is a 1 through 5, positive rating 6 through 10. Season 3 of Next Gen, I didn't give any negative ratings. The lowest rated one was a 6, so that's why that score ended up being the highest. Second highest is actually the season I just covered at the same time as Voyager Season 1, which was Deep Space Nine Season 3. That ended with a 7.19 rating, which was behind TNG Season 3's 7.8 rating. So second highest so far, which again doesn't surprise me, because I called Deep Space Nine Season 3 my second favorite season of the franchise. So far that fits with how I feel. What doesn't fit how I feel is the next season that comes along, which is Next Generation Season 7 with a 6.86, which I had been on the record saying I like Season 6 of TNG better than Season 7. I don't really, most people think it sucks. I like it better than most people, but I don't think I like it quite as well to be my third favorite season so far. And then after Season 7 of TNG comes this season, Voyager Season 1, 6.8. So it does end up with a rather high rating. It's actually very close to TNG Season 7. Also very close, it just barely beat out TNG Season 4, which had a 6.76. So it's all right in that same ballpark, along with Season 6 of TNG with a 6.6. And for the record, I like Season 6 of TNG better than Season 4 or 7 of TNG. So as I said, these average ratings are a bit wonky, but it's interesting to see that so far Voyager Season 1 is ranked 4th. That might likely get pushed back, but we'll see if other than Season 4 of Voyager, if there's any other seasons of Voyager that get a higher average rating, since I stand by that Season 1 is my second favorite season of the show. But it does rank, as I said, pretty high comparatively to TNG, so we'll see. So, the other thing I look at is how many positive rating episodes and how many negative rating episodes. So I gave Voyager Season 1 4 negative rating episodes and 11 positive. So 4 negative is exactly what I gave season 3 of DS9, and that ended up with a very high average. However, the difference here is Voyager has less episodes. So 4 negative rating hits it harder. It messes up the average more because there's less episodes. And also the other thing with DS9 season 3, hold on, let me just bring that up. So I had 4 10-rated episodes, 2 9-rated episodes, and 5 8-rated episodes. Whereas with Voyager Season 1, I had 4 10-rated episodes, which is good. It's decent, especially Next Generation. Some seasons only had 3, and 4 or 5 was the average. So that's pretty good. What's not good, though, it had 0 9-rated episodes and only 1 8-rated episode. So that actually speaks much poorly than Season 3 of DS9. So, yeah, it had 4 7s, so that's probably, the same as 10. And then 2 6s, 1 5, 1 4, 1 3, 1 2. So no 1, which is good. And the highest number was tied with 10s and 7s, so that's good. But so I think that's why it rated somewhat highly, but as I said, didn't stack up to season 3 of DS9 in my opinion. Anyway, I think DS9 is better than Voyager overall anyway, so we'll see. Anyway, I think unlike Next Gen DS9, I expect the ratings for Voyager, other than Season 4, I expect the ratings for Voyager to go down. But we'll see. We'll see if that happens. I think it's definitely happening with Season 3 and 7, considering my feelings on those seasons. But the other ones could be oddballs and come up with different numbers than I expect. But we'll see. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the ranking. So as I normally do with these videos, as I said, I give every episode a rating between 1 and 10. So a number will flash up in the card, which will say the rating of the episode I'm about to talk about. So yeah, we will get started with that. So coming in at number 15, the lowest rated episode of Season 1 of Voyager, is Post Facto with a ranking of a 2. Now, I think in the past I've given this episode a 1, but watching it again, I gotta be honest, and I always have to be honest with myself regardless of what I said in the past, and there are a few things I like about this episode. I do like the overall spy storyline about these aliens coming in and someone who's a spy working for these evil aliens, and they're actually, framing Paris for murder just so they could, pass the information to the other aliens, and that it has to do with espionage, which is kind of in the way that Tuvok sort of runs the investigation and figures it all, put it all together. I like that, so that's what lifts it out of the 1. But why it gets a 2, despite the fact that I like that, is because this has got some of the worst dialogue I've seen. It's up there with Suspicions. So some of the worst dialogue I've seen in any Star Trek episode. Is so fake, it's so cliche. On top of that, the whole storyline of the falsely accused crew member is a tired, boring, cliche storyline in this episode. Despite the spy thing, still does nothing to justify why we're doing this, and it's so obvious that Paris isn't guilty. In fact, this episode very closely resembles the TNG episode, A Matter of Perspective, and that's a far superior episode. And on top of that, it has a stupid neo-noir feel, and as far, it has a dame smoking cigarettes and a fucking dog in the Delta Quadrant, which, if you had a dog in the Delta Quadrant, maybe that's forgivable, but when you combine it with all these other failures, the fact that they're obviously just trying to be all noir, just makes it even more terrible. And on top of that, the acting is horrendous. Particularly this guest actor who plays the 1940s dame, and she's so fake and unbelievable and it doesn't help that the dialogue is written so poorly. So no, all these things make it absolutely terrible. It's just those few nice things save it from getting a 1, but it's still a 2 and the worst episode of Season 1 of Voyager. So next we'll get into my number 14, 3-rated episode, Learning Curve. I think I decided I liked this episode even less than I remember liking it. Again, this is a case of bad acting, bad dialogue, poorly written dialogue. This is also very guilty of that. I mean, it's a good idea. Like, I like the concept of there being Maquis crew who can't sort of assimilate to the Voyager style and Starfleet style of doing it. Like, that's only natural. That makes sense. It's the execution of that storyline that I think completely fails. First of all, this should have been early in the season. This should have been episode 4 or 5. It doesn't make sense being the finale. And secondly, the whole point of this training that Tuvok is giving these Maquis crew members is to make them feel part of the crew. That's something that Janeway made explicit. And yet he treats them all like dicks. And add more to the point, he treats them like, primary school students or middle school students, or intermediate students, if you want to use the British term. But he teaches them like he treats them like 12-year-olds, makes them run laps around the cargo bay, and makes them do like this ridiculously strenuous hike where he put the gravity on the ship, like made it heavier. For no reason. Like, the point wasn't to make them more physically agile. The point was to assimilate them into the crew and have them learn Starfleet regulations. Like, they're already Maquis terrorists. They're terrorists. They're freedom fighters. I'm pretty sure they're pretty agile physically, even though those 2 people were out of shape. But still, that's not the point. The point is, the whole point of the thing was to make them feel part of the crew. And how the fuck does treating them like teenagers make them feel part of the crew? It's just ridiculous, and the dialogue's terrible, and that one actor, particularly the one who plays the lead Maquis, is so bad. He's so fake. I don't buy anything he does. So no, this is and plus it has this ridiculous side plot about cheese, which is kind of funny, but it's stupid. Nobody cares. Coming in at number 13 is Faces, and this is where myself and popular opinion part ways. I think most people do really like this episode, and to be fair, because I gave it all the way to a 4, which is a respectable rating for a negative rating, I should say. Because I do agree that this is an interesting horror storyline. I do like the Vidian storyline. I think that it's very terrifying. It's very scary. It's very intense. Particularly when the dude rips his face off and puts it on him to try to appeal to B'Elanna. Like, that's really fucked up and twisted in a way that I love, and it appeals to me. The problem, though, with this episode, why it still gets a negative rating despite all that, is the main storyline, with having B'Elanna being split in 2 halves, a Klingon and a human, to be a metaphor for how she has an inner struggle with her human Klingon side, which is way too clunky and on the nose way of doing this. Like, this simplifies a very complex issue, and this is something I very rarely say, but there's actually a season 7 episode that does it better, where B'Elanna has an inner struggle with the fact that her child may look too Klingon, and she feels, and we get her backstory of why she doesn't like her Klingon heritage. Like, that is the better way to handle it. This, with having a Klingon going, "Oh, you have no honor," like, what? Like, why is B'Elanna, if they're splitting her in half, which the whole concept is ridiculous, but this is Star Trek, so we'll go with it. But why is she acting like a Klingon who loves Klingon heritage and Klingon culture? Because B'Elanna does not love Klingon heritage and culture. Just because you separated Klingon DNA, it's not going to change that. Unless you're saying that culture is in DNA, which is fucking stupid. So no, this is a dumb episode. The only thing that saves it is the Vidian storyline. Alright, so next we get into my number 12, 5 rating episode, Cathexis. What happened in this episode again? I forgot. This is, I think, might get the prize for most forgettable episode. I will say, most of the forgettable episodes in the franchise are in Voyager. Just FYI for that one. But this one's particularly forgettable. Like, I had to be reminded like multiple times of what the hell happens in it. And it's overall goofy. It's got the cliche alien taking over as a crew member and doing nasty things storyline, but it combines that with Chakotay's spirit is running around inhabiting people at the same time. Like, okay, so I did give it a 5 because it's not terrible. Like, there are some interesting character beats in here. It was kind of interesting having Tuvok play the villain and everyone try to figure out. But, yeah, the goofball thing about Chakotay's spirit was no. And plus, it's just forgettable. It's just kind of cliche. So, 5 for that, a forgettable episode. Alright, so next we get into my number 11, 6 rated episodes, which finally there are 2 of them. So first we get to number 11, which is Emanations. Yeah, another kind of forgettable episode, but I remember it a little bit more than Cathexis, because Harry Kim dies. One of the 2 times that he dies. Okay, to be fair, he dies a bit more, but so does the rest of the crew, so it doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, there's only 2 times that he really dies. But anyway, yeah, so this has to do with death and a different culture, how to treat death, and their whole cult, religious, spiritual beliefs getting disproven in front of them and how they react to it. Which sounds like an interesting idea, but again, this is another one that the execution doesn't quite match the potential of the idea. But not terrible. It does have Deep Throat, and who's also Mark Twain going, "Oh no, I remember." He's in this episode, so I guess that's something. Anyway, next we'll get into my number 10, which is The Cloud. So this is a really interesting character story. You have interesting character beats, but the problem is one of the most boring, like, A plot. It's not even a B plot, it's the A plot about some nebula that's really alive, and Janeway says, "Oh, there's coffee in that nebula." Whoop-de-fucking-do. And and then they some of the character stuff is not that good, like Neelix is being an annoying little dick, being like, "Oh, that's so cool, why I see a nebula, let's go study this dangerous nebula." I'm like, "You dick." Every single episode so far in the show, Voyager has been trying to get resources. They're not studying and they're not exploring. They're trying to replenish the resources. You idiot. But anyway, and on top, and plus he's such a whiny bitch. "Oh, why didn't you let me go on my ship and while you do this dangerous shit?" I'm like, "Get the fuck out, you annoying little hedgehog motherfucker." Anyway, and of course, is one of the many episodes that have a bit culturally insensitive portrayal of Native Americans, even though the showrunners mean well. They just hired a scam artist as their consultant, so you get cliche stuff like this. And also, why is Paris breaking into Harry Kim's quarters in the middle of the night, and why is he talking about remembering being in the wound? Don't be a fucking pretentious twat. Anyway. Alright, so next, 7 rated episodes. We get into my number 9, which is Phage. I still think it should be called The Phage, but I gotta let that one go. So, originally I had this rated lower because I think Neelix is as annoying as fuck. Even more so than The Cloud. In this episode, it has these like singing and whining, and granted he's paralyzed and that's a huge deal, but I don't need like 5 minutes of him like whining at the doctor. Like, why are you putting me through this? Like, why? I don't get it. Like, have like 30 seconds of it to portray that he's uncomfortable. But we don't need like 10 minutes, or however long it was. And the whole phage thing was very interesting, which is why I think my rating going up. I actually really love the cat and mouse hunt that Janeway had with the Vidians. I think that was very exciting, and it was interesting seeing them finally manipulate the Vidians to fixing Neelix. However, Janeway was being a putz. She's being a bad captain in this episode by saying, "Oh, if you ever like steal my crew members' organs and you know, which sentence them to a life of misery, being paralyzed, and they'll probably die soon. If you ever do anything like this again, I'm going to wag my finger at you and give you a strongly worded complaint." Terrible captain this episode, but still decent episode. So anyway, we'll get into my number 8, which is Parallax. This is another anomaly bullshit that's even less interesting than the Cloud, but the character story is actually more interesting. This is what we needed more of in the beginning of the season, beginning of the show, which we didn't get, which is the Maquis crew assimilating into Voyager, particularly with B'Elanna Torres, as Chakotay really wants to make her a chief engineer, and Janeway's very much against that because she's undisciplined and not trained in Starfleet ways. She dropped out of the academy, and so it's Janeway getting to know B'Elanna and actually vibing with her, and B'Elanna not believing in herself, and Janeway sort of turning that around. So it's a really interesting character story. They did overdo it sometimes with the feud between Carrie and B'Elanna, but for the most part, it was an interesting character story. So next we'll get into my number 7, which is Heroes and Demons. So this is a holodeck episode where they avoid the trapped in the holodeck cliche, although they do have the safeties malfunction cliche, but it's not really a trapped in the holodeck, kind of sort of, but not really. It's actually a interesting character episode for the Doctor, probably the first most important episode that starts to develop the Doctor, where he starts to think of himself more as a real person and goes on an away mission in the holodeck to save crew members. And it's a good, he interacts and falls in love and finds, has to be like the hero, which is something that he's not used to. So I found it an interesting character story in that ways. The Beowulf backdrop, it's kind of whatever. It's not that interested in that, but overall it was a decent episode. So next we get into my number 6, which is Time and Again. Time travel logic is not the best in this episode, but it's still an interesting concept of them sort of Janeway thinking, oh, we can't mess up the Prime Directive, but then realizing, no, we're the one who caused this, and then her changing her mind and deciding to try to change it. And I love this sort of back and forth between Tom Paris and Janeway. It's a good early version of that, seeing how these two characters interact, how Tom Paris doesn't care much for rules and regulations, but Janeway really does. And then, of course, you got a good use of Cass's telepathic powers, which I love. I think it's something they should have taken advantage of more in this show. So, so this is a pretty strong episode. So next we get into my one and only 8 rated episode, which is Caretaker, the big 2-hour premiere. First episode, it's one of my favorite first episodes. In fact, I might have changed my mind and said it is in fact my favorite. Because when I did that ranking, I had it as number 3 behind 2 Modern Trek episodes, but now I'm starting to think maybe this one's better. Because I think it was, especially compared to DS9 pilot, which I know most people like better, and I think it has a better character story with Sisko, but the reason why this is better, because that one's very sloppy with their exposition, where Odo's like, I was found in the Gamma Quadrant and I don't know where it come from. They're like, I would just ask you if you wanted coffee. But anyway, so the dialogue and the exposition is a lot more natural. It's actually very interesting, the way that they start, and it's actually necessary viewing for the show, because it sets up the whole kit and caboodle about the Maquis and Voyager being thrown into Delta Quadrant and being forced to work together, and introducing the Ocampa, and of course the Kazon will be relevant for at least 2 seasons, and that sort of thing. And so I think it was a very interesting, good storyline that also does the job of introducing all the characters in a natural and very convincing way, which is what a good pilot should do. Alright, skipping over to the 9s, as I said, we'll just get to the final 4. The best of the best, the 10 rated episodes. So we'll start with my number 4. And to be fair, this is barely a 10. In the past, I've given it a 9, and I just slightly edged it from a 9 to a 10 recently. And that's Great, This Sucks. Shout out to Kyrie091. Now, it's State of Flux, not Gate for Trucks. Yeah, so this actually impressed me. What actually pushed it up from a 9 to a 10 for me was the knowledge that they introduced Seska with the express purpose of making her a Cardassian spy. They came up with the idea to have a Cardassian spy among the Maquis, early on, one of the first episodes. This episode was originally one of the first ones written for the show, but they pushed it back and delayed it so that they could introduce Seska and get us to know her first. I fucking love that. That is something that this show should have done more of, and why it kind of sucks in later seasons, because they stopped doing stuff like this. That was fucking brilliant. So for me, that pushes up to a 10, but I already like this episode a lot because it's very intriguing. The intrigue between Seska and Carrie, and trying to figure out who the spy is, and finding out one of them's working with the Kazon, but they find out that Seska's a Cardassian, but that doesn't necessarily make her a Kazon spy, so they have to test her. And the way this unfolds is very intriguing, very fascinating, very good spy storyline. It's a great episode. So next we'll get into my number 3, which is Jetrel. This might have dropped maybe a smidgen from last time I saw it, but I still love this episode. I think it's underrated. I don't know why people underrate this episode so much, because granted, it's not as good as Duet, and it's trying to be, but still, it is a very powerful episode about Neelix's personal struggle and how he sort of projects his own inner turmoil onto this historical figure who's known for creating a weapon of mass destruction that killed millions of his people, or hundreds of thousands. I can't remember the exact figure, but whatever. He killed a lot of his people, and including his family, and he's projecting this hatred towards him, but this guy feels very guilty about what he did, and he's trying to make amends. And I think it's an amazing character journey for Neelix, and how Kes comforts him. I think this is a prime example of why I like the Kes and Neelix relationship, and also the strength of the dream sequences where Neelix is confronted with the fact that he was a deserter, and how he's haunted by thinking of himself as a coward, and he's projecting that hatred on to Jetrel. And later, he actually takes the giant step of forgiving Jetrel, which was a powerful moment, very powerful moment. Now, the reason why I said it dropped a smidgen is because they didn't build up to this at all. They didn't even mention anything about this war or Neelix losing his family. Like they did with Seska, this should have been built up to just a smidgen, but they didn't do any building up, so it did kind of feel like it came out of nowhere. But anyway, we'll get into my number 2, which is Eye of the Needle. Great character story. I think my number 2 and my number 1 are examples of what I mean by season 1 being more character focused. And this is what I love. This is what I thought the show should have been. And what I love about this episode in particular, that's something we'll definitely lose in later seasons, is it doesn't feel the need to have a giant threat. It doesn't feel the need that, the Romulans are deceiving you and they're trying to take over the ship or something, which is something that the later seasons would rely on way too much. And I love that it's not. There's no evilness. There's no conflict. It's just a suspicious Romulan who doesn't quite trust the Federation, and Janeway opening up to him and getting him to trust her. Very amazing character story, and we had lots of good character moments with all the crew. We had the Doctor has an interesting storyline about trying to get respected, and we see the different dynamic of the crew dealing with the prospect of us going home, but then getting that sort of crushed. Now, people complain that I did that too much. I think maybe so, but not yet. Like, this is a good example of it. In fact, if this episode happened later in the show, I would say they should have gotten home in this episode. But it would have been way better than that bullshit they did do to get them home. But that's another topic entirely. No, so this was the weird time thing they did was amazing. It's like true to Star Trek. Nice twist. Loved it. Great episode. So then we will get into my number 1 favorite episode of season 1 of Voyager. And this actually, it used to be Eye of the Needle. I upped this episode several ranks. I always gave it a 10 though, more recently anyway. And but this is, I decided to make the determination that this is my favorite episode of season 1, and that is Prime Factors. I want to give you pleasure. So to me, this is like a prime, no pun intended, example of the character stories and the sense of community, the feeling of Voyager as community. Like, I love the scene at the start of the episode that just shows B'Elanna and Tom and Harry and Seska just fucking about. And again, this is a great build-up for Seska for the next episode, which is great. This sucks. And it was a good build-up to show her as a bit mischievous. But on top of that, it's just an amazing character story. And again, they didn't feel the need to have conflict. Now, granted, the aliens aren't the best guys ever, and they do have ulterior motives, and apparently they're originally meant to be a recurring villain. Thank God they didn't do that. That would have been dumb. But the point is, even though they just kind of have an ulterior motive, they're not your typical bad guys. They're not like, we're just giving them a vacation so we can take over the ship and steal it, which is the bullshit that they'll do in later seasons. Where here, they're just like lazy and like, they just like things that are new. It's more of a character flaw, and that's way more interesting. And also the main thing that makes this episode so great, though, is the fact that Janeway doesn't want to defy Starfleet regulations and go behind the leader's back with unofficial channels to get technology that might get them home. But Tuvok, of all people, agrees to do it, and there's a little conspiracy building with B'Elanna and Carey previously hated each other. They're working together because they agreed that they should try to get home, and they thought, Tuvok caught them, they're fucked now. But then no, Tuvok's like, yeah, I'll do it for you. Like, that was an amazing twist. And the scene where Janeway is like dressing down B'Elanna and Tuvok, especially the Tuvok one, was so powerful. Like, so I'll compare this to like the scene in The Phage where Janeway is like, she's acting very emotional, and she's like, I don't have the luxury of throwing you in the brig, and being like, if you do this again, I'm gonna wag my finger harder at you. It's like, why are you showing like so much vulnerability and emotions to these fucking aliens that are your enemies that try to fucking rip out your crew's organs? Like, what the fuck? So I think that was bad writing, and made her like look like a bad captain, because they wanted to show her be more sensitive, and I think that was a false way to do it. This was the correct way to do it, to show her more sensitive side. The fact that she felt betrayed by her closest friend and ally on the ship, which is a huge fucking deal, and you can hear it in her voice. Kate McGrew does such an amazing performance, where she, and Tim Russ also, like, it does an amazing performance. The way through his Vulcan facade, you can see how hurt he is that he betrayed his friend and confidant. Like, it's such an amazing moment. It's like this whole episode, I think I've been underrating it just a little bit. I think it's one of the best of the show, so that's my number one prime factors. So that is it for my top 10, or not top 10, sorry, ranking all the episodes of Star Trek Voyager Season 1. Thanks so much for checking this out. If you would like to support the channel, you could leave a comment below. You could give it a like, subscribe, that sort of thing helps me very much, unless you would really like to help me out, which you could do so by supporting me on Patreon. There's a link in the description below for that. Alright, so let's see what's coming up next on the old channel here. So I'm doing, like, in between seasons, I'm doing a couple of wacky videos just to sort of, you know, something to separate the seasons out a little bit more. So Thursday I'll be doing my video on why Vic Fontaine is the worst character in Star Trek, which he objectively is. And on Saturday I'm going to do a wacky video called Star Trek What If, where I'm going to come up with a couple of what if scenarios like that Marvel show and try to follow it through to its conclusion. Could be a good thought experiment. But then next Monday, I will get back to reviewing every episode of Voyager and Deep Space Nine, starting with the Season 2 Voyager premiere, the 37s. So that's what's coming up on my channel. Be sure to check it out as I continue to cover Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and many other videos and many other Star Trek shows and other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.